Huxley. Perhaps this is a second chance. Lewis. I rather think it's the place and time to become clear about our first chance. Kennedy. What do you mean by that? What first chance? Lewis. The choices we already made on Earth. Kennedy. I thought you said you thought this was purgatory. Lewis. I do. What do you mean by purgatory? Kennedy. You do love your question, don't you? Huxley. Is Socrates reincarnated, Jack? Lewis. Forget the compliment and answer the question, if you please. That is, if you really want to find out there we are and what we're supposed to be doing. You see, I'm not sure either, and I'm asking this question to clarify my own ideas and find the truth, not just to win a debate with you or to teach you something about that I know and you don't. Kennedy. Aldous was right. You do sound like Socrates. All right. I'll try to answer your question. What do I mean by purgatory? I never thought much about it, but most Catholics believe it was a place where you had to go to suffer for your sins. What do you think, Lewis? I suspect that idea is not only wrong, but not only right either. I think it's more likely that purgatory is a place for education rather than suffering, a sort of remedial reading of your earthly life. As such, it's really the first part of heaven, not a distinct place. So I think we are being prepared for deep heaven if this is purgatory. Kennedy, I hope you're right. Lewis, why? Are you afraid we're in the other place? Kennedy, frankly, I'm not as bothered by the possibility of being in hell as I am by your belief in hell. I find the first quite remote, but the second quite present and threatening. Lewis, why do you find my belief in hell threatening? If you don't find hell itself threatening? Kennedy, for the same reason you'd find belief in witches threatening even if you don't believe in witches. Lewis, I see. Does it bother your mind of or your emotions? Kennedy, what do you mean? Lewis, I mean, are you bothered by my intellectual error or by my motives for believing it? Kennedy the second. Lewis, I thought so. Kennedy, how could a good and responsible and kind man like you want to believe in a place of eternal torment? Are you a closet sadist? Lewis, if a mother shouts to her baby to run out of the street because a truck is coming, is she a sadist? Kennedy, of course not. Lewis, but she believes in the truck and the threat it poses. Kennedy, yes, but she doesn't want it to threaten her baby. She doesn't make up a scary thing like that. Lewis, precisely. And we don't want hell to exist. We didn't make it up. Kennedy, why do you believe in then? Lewis, it's a doctrine of faith. The church has always taught it. The Bible teaches us it. Jesus clearly taught it. Kennedy, so you accept this terrible thing on faith? Lewis, yes. Kennedy, simply because you've been told. Lewis, at first, yes. Then, investigating what I've been told, what we've been told, Jack, with my mind and my imagination, I find that it commends itself to my reason and invites exploration by my rational imagination. Kennedy, faith seeking understanding? Lewis, yes, it's a very whole enterprise. Augustine, Aquinas, Dante, Milton, Kennedy. But you begin with faith. Lewis, yes. Kennedy. And you believe in the first place simply on the grounds of authority, and only later try to prove some of it? Lewis, yes. Kennedy, in other words, you give up your mind to the church. Lewis, no, for two reasons. Not my mind first of all, but my will, and not to the church first of all, but to God. But the God whom I say, thy will be done, replies, it is my will that you believe what I have revealed to you. Kennedy, through the church? Lewis, through the church and the scriptures, whatever their proper interrelationship. I'd rather not go into the whole Protestant Catholic question now. Kennedy, why? To avoid hurting anyone's feeling? Lewis, my goodness, no. I hope we're all at least mature enough not to have to worry about that. We're trying to find the truth, not to put another down. Kennedy, why then? Lewis, for two reasons. First, whenever I wrote any apologetics back on earth, I carefully avoided that question because I believe God had put me to work on the front lines, where Christianity faces the world, not behind the lines, where a civil war rages among Christians. My business was to defend mere Christianity, not any one particular church. Second, because we too are not representative samples. I'm more Catholic than most Protestant, especially concerning church tradition and authority. And you're more Protestant than most Catholic, de-emphasizing just those things, if I'm not mistaken. Kennedy. No, you're not mistaken. And I think we have to argue about authority as such rather than about hell, because it's on the grounds of authority that you believe in hell, and many other things as well. Lewis, fine. Kennedy, I feel I'm really sticking my neck out, debating with a professional theologian. Lewis, I'm not a professional theologian, but real debate to honor the truth, not to beat your opponent, seems to be the right thing to do here, as we were brought here just for that purpose. Do you have that feeling too? Kennedy, yes, very strongly. Lewis, Aldous, we've been leaving you out. Do you have the same feeling? Huxley, yes, and I'd like to keep listening for a while, if it's all right with you. As far as authority goes, I think I'm on Jack's Kennedy side, but I'm with you, Lewis, is in being a traditionalist. My tradition, however, is broader than yours. It includes the whole of what I call the perennial philosophy. Lewis, thereby stealing an epithet from the medieval Christians? Huxley, who do who don't deserve exclusive right to it. The truly perennial philosophy goes back to the Hindu Vedas, but I'd like to hold my own trump card for a while and see how Jack fares against you, Lewis. I'll jump in later on Jack's side. I'm pretty sure. Lewis, I'm doubly pleased that you both will debate with me and that you both will debate with me. Kennedy, aren't you cowed by the odds? Two against one? Lewis, the odds always favor the truth. Huxley, beware this man, Jack. No one has ever cowed him in debate. is a Chesterton, a Shaw. Lewis, thank you, but the comparison is inaccurate on two counts. Huxley, there he goes again. Lewis, first, Shaw and Chesterton were giants. Second, they were wits. I'm neither. Kennedy, what are you then? Lewis, just a plain Christian trying to think clearly. Huxley, see Jack, is a Socrates. Mock humility. Lewis, not mock. Huxley, so you're really humble, huh? And proud of it, no doubt? Kennedy, could you Britishers stop the badinage and start the debate? I'm anxious to hear Lewis' defense of authority. Huxley, go ahead, Lewis. I promise to be the silent audience for a while. Lewis, please jump in whenever you like. Well, now I'd rather not defend authority in general, only the authority on which I believe in heaven and hell, which was the question we began with. That authority is the authority of Jesus Christ. It's not authority but Christ that is the center of my faith. And if we ever get out of this place and into heaven, it will be our way out and in. So the issue of Christ as the primacy, both theoretically and practically. Kennedy, I believe in Christ too, but I'm not comfortable with the concept of authority in relation to him. Didn't he say his only authority was love? Lewis, where is he recorded as having said that? Kennedy, well, something like that. Anyway, the point is, I'm a Christian too, but a different sort than you. And I think a more mature sort, who one who doesn't need as much reliance on authority as you do. Perhaps if you had ever been a president, you will have to come to be suspicious of authority too. Lewis, weren't you suspicious of authority before you came to acquire it? Kennedy, well, yes. Lewis, why are you suspicious of authority? Kennedy, because it sounds like a cop out, a handing over your mind to someone else, a blind leap in the dark, a security blanket, a return to the womb. It's the easy way to let someone else tell you what you think. Lewis, do you really think that's the motive for my acceptance of the authority of Christ? Kennedy, I don't claim to judge you and your motive is. Personally, Lewis, but those seems to me in general the motive for authoritarianism. Yes. Lewis, let's let that phase pass for a moment, rather than delving into psychoanalysis. Let's just suppose that those were my motives, which I do not grant. Do you conclude from this that my old-fashioned beliefs are not true? Kennedy, if you only believe them for those reasons, yes. Lewis, isn't that the genetic fallacy? Huxley, that means determining the truth or falsity of an idea by its origin is Genesis? Kennedy, I knew that. You know, I went to Harvard. Not everything west of Oxford is Yahoo territory. Huxley, sorry, just trying to help. Lewis, well, haven't you committed the genetics fallacy? Kennedy, frankly, I'm not sure it's a fallacy, but if I believe something without good reason, isn't it that sufficient grounds for your discounting my belief? Lewis, But that's not disproving it. An idea is false only because it fails to correspond to reality, and truth only because it does correspond to reality, not because of its psychological origin. I might arrive at a true idea by non rational means, Kennedy. So you admit authority is irrational? Lewis, no, I don't. I may have good reason for trusting in my authority. Kennedy, I also dislike your simple definition of the truth of an idea. I don't think you can define truth in any simple way, like correspondence to reality. All sorts of problems lie sleeping in those polysyllabic abstractions. Lewis, shall I put it into even simpler, concrete words of one syllable? Kennedy, what? Lewis, truth. Kennedy, you mean you will define truth in words of one syllable? Lewis, exactly. It's not my invention by any means. It goes back to Aristotle, and it's not at all difficult. Kennedy, all right, let's hear these non-difficult definitions of truth in words of one syllable. Lewis, here it is. If one says of what is that it is, or of what is not that it is not, he speaks the truth. But if one says of what is that is not, or of what is not that it is, he does not speak the truth. Kennedy, that's amazing. Lewis, but true. Kennedy, why? Yes, it is. A masterpiece of simplicity. Lewis, I'm glad to see you recognize genius and truth. Kennedy, but even if I know what true is, I still don't know why the genetics fallacy is a fallacy. Lewis, because a true idea can still have a non rational cause. Kennedy, give me an example. Lewis, gladly. Most people in the Middle Ages accepted the two ideas that the earth was round and that the universe was enormously large simply because of the authority of Ptolemy, just as they accepted the idea that the sun revolved around the earth rather than the earth around the sun because of Ptolemy. Not because they proved it for themselves. Yes, yet the first two ideas were true, even though the third was false. Kennedy, wait just a minute. Isn't it that a false example? Didn't everyone think the earth was flat in the Middle Ages? And that the universe was tiny and cozy? Wasn't it modern science that opened up the universe and made it so difficult to believe in a providential divine plan for this little out of the way planet? Lewis, sorry, Jack, but you're simply misinformed about that. Most of the modern world is, you know. Nearly every schoolboy is taught what you've been taught, and it's simply not true. Kennedy, can you prove that? Lewis, yes. Read Ptolemy Almagest, Book 1, Section 5. It's the authoritative astronomy text that everyone accepts in the Middle Ages. Kennedy, that's quite a shock. And I went to Harvard. At any rate, the point of this example of yours is, Lewis, that you can decide whether an idea is true or false simply by knowing whether someone accepts it for a rational or a non rational reason. Even if you think authority is a non rational motive for accepting an idea, The idea may still be true, as Ptolemy's first two ideas were Kennedy. Of course, I see. But it still seems right to be suspicious of your easy reliance on authority. I think you do that because you need an intellectual security blanket, a substitute mother, perhaps. Didn't, did, didn't you lose yours early in life? Lewis, yes, and I could equally argue that you hate authority because you rankled under your authoritarian father. You see, two can play at that game, and the personal suspicions simply cancel each other out. We're left with the objective issue. Kennedy, let's get down to that. Then, justify arguing from authority. Lewis, I want to distinguish first between human and divine authority. Although I'm respectful of human authority, I don't want to argue from it as an unquestioned premise. It was a cliche among the medieval philosophers. Kennedy, those authoritarians. Lewis, quite the contrary. The cliche was the argument from authority is the weakest of the arguments. Kennedy, the medievals said that? Lewis, yes, they were quite rational, contrary to the popular superstition about them. Kennedy, what did they mean by authority? Lewis, not that most people mean today power. Obviously, the use of power to settle an argument is a fallacy. It's called the argument ad baculum, the argument from the big stick, the argument from authority may be a weak argument, but it's an argument, not a fallacy, because authority doesn't mean power.